What's up, ladies and gents? Welcome back to my PES gameplay sliders version 2 for FIFA 22. This is for the top teams and divisions only. I've already worked on the lower division PES gameplay sliders for the EFL 2, which I've heard work well also for EFL 1. The aim of these sliders is to provide that beautiful PES 2021 gameplay, and this is definitely a closer representation of the PES gameplay than the version 1, as you're going to see in this split screen comparison running in the background. The teams that I've been using to test these sliders are Manchester United and Liverpool at Old Trafford, and funnily enough the FIFA 22 result was super realistic as it matched the scoreline in real life. If you just want the sliders, then please go ahead and check the description of this video. I'm going to put them in there. If you want to know the changes I've made and why, or just want to sit and watch the gameplay comparison in the background, then please stay tuned. Firstly, please note that I'm using game speed slow, and I've turned off the Agile dribbling in the game and controller setting menus. This is so important to remove that twitchy, lightning fast arcade game speed. This slows the game right down, and it really helps bring that gameplay closer to PES 2021. So let's talk about the sliders. So the first off is the sprint slider. I've kept this at 37, the same as the version 1, as it matches up perfectly, and this is one of the biggest benefactors in providing that PES experience. The player movement has to be much slower than the default FIFA slider setting. So the acceleration I've set to 65. Again, it's the same as version 1. This ensures the player speed and acceleration times are identical to PES, and the reason for these two settings is to help remove the glue and magnetism between the player and the ball, especially when the player is sprinting. So this allows defenders to nip in and take away the ball if you try to sprint too often, the same way it happens in PES. The only thing I would say is that having higher acceleration means your stamina will drop much more quickly during a game if you constantly perform short sprints. So you really need to manage your stamina by being positionally sound rather than running around chasing the ball, which is unrealistic anyway for most players. The shot error is set to 60, again the same as version 1, as shots in PES, in my opinion, are too accurate. If you want a more realistic setting in FIFA 22 for the top teams and the top divisions, then I would recommend setting this to 72. This allows for some wild misses and more unpredictability when shooting on goal. You'll have those misses of the year moments, as well as players missing absolute sitters, and it just adds more drama and realism to the gameplay. One of the biggest changes I've made is to reduce the pass error from 77 to 71. The passing in PES on PA1 is very realistic in my opinion when it comes to passing, especially if you mix in the manual controls by holding L2, giving you enhanced and a greater variety of passes at your disposal. You'll find there's enough stray passes in PES to make it feel like the most realistic football game to date, and that's what I wanted to achieve in FIFA 22. But 77 for the pass error in version 1 was way too high. The amount of misplaced passes was too much, and one-touch passes were simply impossible to pull off, even with really good players. So I've reduced this to 71, but this allows enough misplaced passes, but it also means that one-touch passing can be pulled off, but not every single time, to avoid that ping-pong passing in FIFA 22. The biggest change of all from the version 1 sliders is the pass speed. With PES running along side by side, this actually caught me by surprise at just how much quicker the passing in PES is compared to FIFA's. Even the default FIFA slider, I find the PES passing was much faster, so I increased the pass speed from 25, which was in version 1, to 55. And I think you'll agree by watching this gameplay here that they're almost identical in terms of pass speed. The only caveat here is the way passing works in FIFA is totally different to how it works in PES, because unless you're a full manual FIFA player, the other settings for passing are all assisted in one way or another with the passing power. So it's always going to dictate how much passing power you apply to each pass unless you're full manual. So the only way to offset this is to use the driven pass in FIFA 22 by holding R1 and tapping X. This applies more power to your passes and drives the ball across the field, and that way you're allowed to differentiate between a sort of low power pass to a high power pass. Overall, I'm really happy in terms of how close the passing matches PES to the naked eye, and even when slowed right down to quarter speed, it's nearly perfect and identical to PES. The goalkeeper ability slider at 68 is just right if you want PES-like goalkeepers, but for me personally, I would set the slider to 50 as I've done so for the gameplay you're watching, as this feels absolutely perfect in FIFA 22. Especially if you set the shot error to 72 as I suggested above to make shooting harder, which will help reduce and avoid those high scorelines. The reason for setting this to 50 is to ensure goalkeepers aren't superhuman like they are in PES, because in PES they are simply far too good on the highest difficulty levels, often defying the laws of gravity as they hang in the air and make absolutely ridiculous saves. The next set of sliders were all set to 50 in version 1, which affects the team shape, player runs and how tightly players are marked on the pitch. I wanted to keep the same spacing as PES, but obviously with the plethora of FIFA tactical choices that you can make, it will vary from tactic to tactic, but these replicate PES as close as I can get. I've set the marking to 60, this feels just right as top defenders will stay close to the nearby striker, but world-class strikers will run off lesser defenders and break into space in behind that defence. The run frequency slider is set to 64, and if you watch the number of players running off the player with the ball, it's very similar to PES, especially ensuring players break into the box as you reach the final third without completely emptying the midfield. I set the line height slider to 48, which seemed perfect for the defensive line, but again this does depend on tactical choices on how high this line will be. Like in this example, you can see Liverpool playing a high defensive line both in PES and FIFA, so if the tactics are similar, they will match PES 2021 likeness. The line length slider is set to 54, and this was really important in terms of how the teams will keep the length of the pitch. This spacing along with the pass error make it a nice back and forth game and really helps improve the flow of the matches. Liverpool's gegenpress in FIFA 22 absolutely stifled Manchester United here and were able to capitalise so many times because of the lesser ability in that midfield of Manchester United's to make the passes through the lines. The line width slider is set to 63, ensuring there's a nice team spread across the width of the pitch, and similar to the line length in combination with the high pass error, this ensures matches play in a far more realistic way instead of players bunching up and overcrowding the middle of the park. If you look at the distance between the players in FIFA and PES, there's definitely a similarity there. It will never be perfect as there's so many variables in terms of formations and tactics in both FIFA and PES, and they work in such different ways. The fullback positioning is set to 52 for the slider. This ensures the fullbacks don't occupy the same space as a wide midfielder and only bomb forward when instructed to do so. And also this provides good spacing and support for their wide players as they do in PES. The first touch control error is exactly the same as version 1, and this has been set to 100. This is so important to providing that PES feel where players need to take a touch to guarantee a more accurate pass or pull off the perfect shot. Just watching these two sets of gameplay side by side really shows how close the version 2 set of sliders really is to matching that PES gameplay in FIFA 22. Adjusting the passing speed was definitely the one I messed up the most in the version 1 set of sliders. I did like the pass speed being so slow from a realism point of view, but it really wasn't needed. In PES, the players are slow, but the ball moves quickly, giving it that simulation feel. I personally feel the passing speed in PES is perhaps a little too fast. I'd probably opt for 45 in the pass speed in FIFA 22 if you want a more realistic feeling. To conclude, there may be a version 3, but it's going to be very difficult to get even closer to the PES 2021 gameplay than this. It feels good, it plays really well, and again on world class with default assists, I still find it really challenging enough for players moving over to FIFA. The sliders between the user and CPU should be identical. If you would like, carry on watching the video comparison in the background and check out the realistic scoreline in the FIFA 22 video. Otherwise, that's a wrap from me. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button and overhead kick that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and turn those notifications on. Take care all and stay safe. Peace out. Bye bye.